Ready to go.
All right, please state your name.
Hi, Stephanie. My name is Sam Kelly.
What ward did you serve in and the branch of service?
I was in the United States Marine Corps, and the period I served was in the Vietnam conflict.
What was the highest rank achieved?
Captain. Relax, Stephanie, too. You know, seriously, I'm relaxed. You relax.
All right, I'm going to ask you a few questions.
Sure.
All right, where were you born?
I was born in Coral Gables, Florida, in 1944.
Were you raised there?
No, my dad was a captain with Pan American, so I lived in Guatemala and England, and the first 3 years of school were in England after World War II. But I grew up in Pennsylvania from 3rd grade through high school.
Did you grow up with any brothers or sisters?
Brother and a sister.
What were you doing before you got into the service?
I was at Wake Forest, and I got my bachelor's degree in history and communication. And I went through ROTC at Wake Forest and through all of the training, and then I took a Marine Corps commission and went through the Marine Corps training at Quantico. I went to basic school in 1966 and 67, part of 67 at Quantico. And then I went to flight school in Pensacola, the Naval Air Training Command, 1967 to 1968. I got my wings May 10th of 1968, my Naval Aviator wings. And you want me to continue on the chronological?
You can if you'd like.
Well, I'll just give you a chronological rundown, and then you can ask questions or interrupt me, whatever you'd like to do. But at the time, they needed a lot of helicopter pilots, and my dream was to fly A4s, maybe F4s or A6s, but I really liked the A4. It was a single-seater. And the needs of the Marine Corps at the time, they had far more helicopter squadrons than they did fixed-wing squadrons. So I went through both fixed-wing, meaning airplanes, the full syllabus in the T-34 and the T-28. And the T-28 is a Korean War type prop with a big 9-cylinder radial engine, 1820 horsepower. And went through instrument and formation, and as soon as I finished all of that training, they had a base in Pensacola called Ellison Field, named after a naval aviator that perished. And I got my helicopter training there. At the time, it was in the Bell H-13, which is the little bubble, plexiglass bubble, was on skids, and then their advanced trainer was the CH-34, which was built by Sikorsky. Had that same engine that the T-28, a 9-cylinder radial, so that was sitting in front of you. And then when I got my wings, the day I got my wings, I had orders to Santa Ana, California to train out there in the CH-46, but the day I got my wings, they took 4 of us and sent us to HMX-1, which is the President's Squadron. And we went through NAMO, which is the ground school at New River, North Carolina, and then to HMX-1. And the reason they did that is they had alpha models. And the alpha model was the first model CH-46 built. Later came the Delta model, and the Delta model was a larger engine and a more advanced version of the Alpha model. So they needed Alpha model. They had both Alpha model CH-46s and Delta model CH-46s and they lost a bunch of Alpha model crews, so they needed 4 pilots fast-tracked to get to Vietnam. So the 4 of us went through HMX, and we got 100 hours, and we were trained by the President's pilots who had just gotten back from Vietnam. The man that, Ron Groves, was the pilot that trained me, and Soupy Campbell was another pilot that trained me, and they had already served their tour in Vietnam in '66 and '67. So I really got some good training in the Alpha model. And then then they fast-tracked us to Vietnam. So I was in Vietnam in August, got my wings in May, and I flew into Da Nang, which is probably in the middle of I Corps, number 1 Corps, I Corps, where the Marine Corps was. And there was the helicopter field at Da Nang was called Marble Mountain. And it's on the beach. It's quite pretty, and I think I've not been back, nor do I care to go back to Vietnam, but it's, you know, I think it's a resort now, because it certainly had the beautiful qualifying terrain to be one. So I was at Marble Mountain. I joined HMM 265 there, and in August of '68, 1st of October of '69, we moved up to Phu Bai. Phu Bai was up the coast, north, and beyond Phu Bai was Quang Tri. Quang Tri was our furthest base. Marble Mountain, or Da Nang, then Phu Bai, and then Quang Tri. And I was at Phu Bai for actually until June, and we went aboard the Iwo Jima LPH-7, which is a helicopter carrier, and it maneuvered off of, we supported the 1st Marine Division off of Da Nang. When I was at Phu Bai, I supported our squadron supported the 3rd Marine Division and the 1st Marine Division, and elements of both. And let's see, while at Phu Bai, they needed the 3rd Marine Division, 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marine Regiment needed actually an air liaison, because they already had one of our helicopter pilots as a forward air controller. So I joined them at a abandoned fire base right below Khe Sanh. And a reinforced battalion is quite a large body of men. And the area that we were in was all triple canopy jungle. And it was elevation high and down low through the valleys. And so we went from right below Khe Sanh, the fire base south and east of Khe Sanh, down to the Laotian border. And that's where then I was medevaced out in an Army dust-off helicopter, which is Army's medevac helicopter. They don't carry any guns, just a pilot and a medic and crew chief. So they picked me up and took me back to Vandergrift, or LZ Stud, which is right below the DMZ, and then to the aid station at Quang Tri, which was triage at Vandergrift, and then further, you know, they evaluated you at Quang Tri, and if they had the hospital ship Repose and Sanctuary were the 2 Navy ships, hospital ships, and they cruised off of Da Nang and off of Quang Tri and Phu Bai, primarily to take the head injuries, spinal injuries, eye injuries. All the specialists were out on the ship, and the cut and stitch guys were, you know, the more gross surgeries were not there. So then I went back to the battalion. A bee stung me, and I'm allergic to bees, and I went into shock, and my breathing stopped, and but I'm here, so so I had to go back and check out. So they flew me back. I said goodbye to the colonel and went back to flying the next day with my squadron at Fubai. And I spent 13 months in country, and let's see, that's in a nutshell, that's the chronological order of my Vietnam tour. Did I stimulate any conversation on questions?
Why did you decide to join the Marines?
Well, I don't know if this will be politically correct or not, but I don't really care. I was at Wake Forest, and I like Wake Forest. My family's from the South, even though I grew up in Pennsylvania. My father's was from Orlando, and my mother's from Chattanooga. My father was in the Army Air Corps before the war, and I really wanted to fly jets, and the Army didn't have jets. So I went through what was available at Wake Forest, and I played a little football there. And so I went through all their training, and I saw their finer units, which they like to show off, like the Green Berets and those type of troops. And believe me, at the time in the '62, the Green Berets were really specialists. Well, by the time I finished my 4 years there and went through the Army's training, Army's very big. And I knew I was going to combat, and I wanted to fight with the best. So I did everything I could to get in the Marine Corps, and I did get in the Marine Corps, and I went through all of their training. I'm not slamming the Army, because I was with the 82nd Airborne training there at Fort Bragg, and they were STRAC troops, so don't get me wrong. But overall, the Marine Corps and the esprit de corps that the Marine Corps has, I'd much rather fight. If you're going to fight with the best. No offense to the Army.
Whenever you left to go to Vietnam, did you leave a sweetheart behind?
Well, let's see. I was. You really don't want me to get into that. Let me put it this way. When I was in California, right before I left, I was out there. I met a really wonderful young lady, and I had her memories to leave by, but she wasn't really a sweetheart. She was just a very nice person, so I really didn't have time. Quantico is a wonderful place to be based. When you have a little time off, the ratio of single women in Washington is you asked the question, it's very high. And they had parties for us and everything. The JOPA parties was the Junior Officers and Professional Association, so it was like they had dances, and they were chaperoned by the whatever service, the wives of whatever. So I didn't have any family, wife or children, and I think that makes a big difference. It was just myself to worry about, and I think I often reflected back on the 4 men I told you originally that I trained with at Quantico at HMX. They're all dead now. One of them was just buried 2 summers ago at Arlington with Marine Corps band, the silent drill team, and everything. The other 2 were killed in Vietnam, and they were both married. So, they both had little children, and they both were killed in their tour. So I often thought, how unfair it was for the married guys to live, and for us single guys for them to die, and for the single guys to live. But that's not for me to question. So is that where you're sort of leading?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought.
What were the early days of training like?
Well, you have to remember, I was a young man, and I enjoyed it, and it was a challenge, and I loved it, every bit, every part of it, and the flying it's exciting, you know, whether you're in combat or just flying, it's exciting. And combat flying is a lot different, and there's a lot of ambiguity there, and because from my role, I'll give you my feelings from my role, and the ambiguity comes that you're there fighting a war, and you have 250 caliber machine guns on either side of your aircraft, and the crew chief and the gunner are going to shoot what they have to. In that sense, you know,